Hey friends, this is Christopher Davis-Shannon. When we think about playing a musical instrument, one word that we hear over and over is practice. From the best players, how did you get to the level that you are? Well, practice is how I got there. But sometimes we don't really take a step back, and this goes for teachers as well, is that sometimes we forget to teach our students what practice is. And the thing is that the routine that we create in what we call the practice room really has two distinct elements to it. We have both practice and play. And both of these are important to becoming a better player. So let's explore that a little bit further. So first thing is first, we need to actually define what practicing is. Practicing is not just picking up your instrument and doing whatever you want on it. We've talked a lot about different means of practicing on this channel as far as effective practice, as well as interleaved or random practicing, and different routines that we can use. But practice itself is ultimately problem solving. When we sit down with our instrument in a practice environment, we are not simply just playing music whatsoever. We are identifying pieces that need to be solved, whether it be a chord change or a scale or a specific bar of a piece of music. The reason that we learn our scales and chords is so that we can apply them later and not have to do that problem solving in the middle of a piece. And likewise, when we're learning a new piece of music, much of it will be familiar to us because they are problems that we have already solved, but we need to identify the issues that are inherent in that piece and create a practice routine to get around those problems. So when we talk about practice itself, it is not really the musical aspect of things, but it is the technical side of playing that we need to learn in the practice room so that we can begin to apply the musical principles. Now, also in the practice room, we need to play music. This is our ultimate goal in playing an instrument, is not to play scales and chords and excerpts. We ultimately want to play music. And sometimes if you get too hung up on the concept of practice itself, or this problem-solving aspect of just running scales, running arpeggios, picking apart pieces of music, which is very important, we forget the ultimate goal of playing music. And we need to give ourselves time in the practice room to really let loose and apply these principles without thinking too strongly about it in the moment. We can become really a great technician on the instrument through practice, but technique does not make music. Music is a much more abstract concept than that. So we need to take time in the practice room also to just play, to be ourselves, to interpret the music in front of us in a free way. And this is just as important in becoming an overall musician as technical practice is. So let's look at how we can set up a practice routine to incorporate both of these aspects in the practice room. Now, after thinking about the distinction between these two concepts, especially if you're a beginner, you might be finding that what you're actually doing, what we call practice, is really more play. And maybe we need to identify some things to practice, but this is the thing. Not many people really practice 4 hours a day. You know, the practice, the technical aspect, is a small part. There's only so much we can do each day. Our brain can only handle so much new information and so much problem solving in one day. But if we think back to just the definition of practice, repetition is key. And repetition doesn't mean necessarily only doing something 100 times. It also means consistently doing it throughout a number of days. So I want you to do this week in your practice is select just one technique that you want to work on and spend 5 minutes per day working on that. With a metronome, if it works for you, if it works for the technique that you want to do. You can also identify just a piece of music, a couple bars that you have trouble with and want to work through. But only 5 minutes. I don't want you to work too hard on this because part of it is we don't want to go into autopilot mode. Once we solve a problem, we're not continually solving it. But the next day, there'll still be a little bit of that problem left to solve because we won't have internalized all of it. So these little bits of practice each day on singular elements are very important. Repetition throughout days, not repetition back to back, one after another. So only 5 minutes of practice, and then I want you to take the rest of your time, be it 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and go over the tunes that you already know, to play them, to internalize them further, to even record them and listen back. Listen back to what you construe as a performance of that piece and critique yourself musically. Is there something we could have done in phrasing this piece better while we're playing? Is there something that we could have done articulation-wise that would have worked better in this? Self-criticism is one of the biggest tools that we have in the practice room. So this week when you sit down with your instrument, just take the time to think about what you're actually practicing and what you're playing.